Blaise LaVista might be the nation's most underrated wide receiver.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Got a really fun show coming at all you everydayers out there today. But just a quick reminder, wherever you get this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, we're there, we're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you never miss when we post a new video. Plus, if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. All that really does help the channel out a lot. Now, like I said, really fun show coming at you today. Hannes Steinbach, Washington's, I honestly might be even be just the top overall acquisition that Danny Sprinkle made ahead of the 25-26 college basketball season, is just tearing it up at the FIBA U19 World Cup. I want to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about, because it's the 4th of July, some players that are going to bring the fireworks, the explosive plays for Washington this season. Omari Evans is a big one. Mohammad, we'll get to a couple other names a little bit later on, but I want to talk about some of Washington's underrated recruiting targets, because we talked about some of the big time names the other day. I wanted to spend some time on a couple of sleepers here, and one of them is somebody who we haven't talked about much yet because he just got offered by Washington the other day. That's 3-star wide receiver Blaise LaVista from Illinois, and this is somebody who it seems like he's on the verge of really blowing up. He's somebody who won Alpha Dog at Overtime 7-on-7 finals, one of the many 7-on-7 camps that are out there over the last couple of days. And he really seemed to catch the eye of some of the national talent evaluators, Andrew Evans, Tom Lloyd, Brennan Huffman, all talking about what a really impressive target he is. And to be honest, I'm not sure how this guy flew under the radar for as long as he did, where you go and you look at the numbers. It's 60 catches for a little over 1,400 yards, which he led all of Illinois wide receivers in catches as a junior. And then he also had 24 touchdown receptions. If you're wondering, that is 40% of his catches as a junior went for touchdowns. And when you throw on the film, in my opinion, it's very easy to see why. He's somebody who I think would fit really, really well in this Jedd Fisch offense on the outside as the X or the Z, whatever position they really want to isolate and just find a role for him in, because he is really, really fast. At 6'2", 190, he has the ability to make plays after the catch, where there are some plays where he understands how to get clean releases, which is one thing that I really do like about his film. But it's not just he wins because he's bigger and stronger than everybody else on the field. He looks like the fastest player on every field that he stepped on at any point last season. He takes the top off of defenses. He finds ways to win at all three levels, and going back with how that couples into his releases, it's not like he's, just getting off coverage and running by guys. A lot of cornerbacks are trying to press him, and he understands how to use his feet and use his hands to create releases for himself. And again, win at all three levels of the field. And this is something where, as Washington does continue to pursue a guy like Daniel Odom, who the 4-star wide receiver from St. John Bosco, who I still believe is their number one target on the outside, if he does decide to stay committed to Oklahoma, or maybe flip to Florida State with Jaden O'Neal, who I know he's got a really close relationship with, this is somebody who Washington fans are going to look at the ranking and say, oh, he's rated in, the 160s in receiver rankings and 1,200 overall. That is going to change very, very soon. And I don't even say that just from a perspective of, hey, he's starting to get some more Power 4 offers, Washington being the first one. But again, this film is really, really crisp, and it belongs among some of the nation's top receivers. It's so impressive to watch him go to work because he just understands how to play the position so well. And one of my favorite things is one of the most important things that I think Jedd Fisch and Kevin Cummings are looking for in somebody who's going to play that outside receiver role. Yeah, being the big physical kind of guy is really nice, but they like guys who can get the ball in their hands and make plays after the catch. And that's something that he does really, really well. I wrote an article about him over on Huskies Wire. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned was he kind of looks like a running back when he starts picking up yards after the catch, where I wrote down the yak on my little notes sheet over here. And for wide receivers, obviously it's yards after catch. For running backs, it's yards after contact. With Blaise LaVista, it's both, because there are multiple plays where there are defenders who seem to have an angle on him, and he just eliminates it with speed, which is really, really fun to see. But then there are several times where he just catches the ball on underneath routes on a couple of different, screen plays, different things like that. And he just makes guys miss, stiff arms guys, tacklers bounce off him, and it's the high school level, right? Like, that's expected from any player who's going to go on and play big time college football. But it's just the way that he does it with such ease that's really, really fun to see. And it's something where if you're intrigued in watching film, this is a really great place to start. And just, you look at that film and it's, oh yeah, this guy is not rated properly. He's got all the tools of somebody who, I believe Omari Evans is the one who said it when discussing his performance on 247, to play big time college football. It would be the Big 10, the Big 12, I think, are the two conferences that he shouted out. Where that's something I'm really, really interested in, because as this recruiting process plays out, he's somebody who Lars and I on the show a lot have talked about Washington's ability to identify high-end talent. And Blaise LaVista is a really, really high-end talent who I'm super curious to see how that's going to play out down the line. And that's a name that I really believe that all Husky fans and anybody who's interested in recruiting should keep an eye on, because he's not going to stay ranked where he is for very long. And he's somebody who, as Washington has done for a very long time, can get in early with and develop that relationship with, could end up being truly giving them a major payoff down the road. But that's not the only guy I want to talk about. I do want to mention one thing from Wednesday's show where Lars and I were talking about 4-star cornerback Devon Benjamin, and we were referencing a 247 report that had Oregon and Washington listed as the finalists. I know there are other reports out there that are saying it's Oregon and Michigan, with Texas hanging around. There are a lot of different reports out there, so that's one thing to keep in mind with just the recruiting game as a whole. These things just can always change so quickly. And that's exactly why I want to talk about Rahsjon Duncan, from a 3-star cornerback or safety. I want to get to that in a sec. From down in Oakland, California, I believe he goes to McClemens High School. And this is somebody who I heard from a couple of sources of mine that are pretty close to the coaching staff, as soon as this offer went out, saying the staff is absolutely enamored with this kid. And when you throw in his film, it's so easy to see why. It's one of those things where he's a big, long corner, 6'1", 6'2", somewhere in that range, 175, 180 right now, with the ability to put a lot of weight on his frame. And I look at him in the same light of Devon Benjamin, not in terms of skill set, where Devon is obviously way more just technically advanced right now in terms of his development, but in terms of the positional versatility. One thing I've seen a lot of just around just recruiting evaluations as a whole when it comes to Rahsjon Duncan is he has the ability to play either position or both at the college level. And that's something that meshes really well with what Ryan Walters wants to do, where he certainly likes to be able to cross-train defensive backs to play corner, to play safety. And it's something we've talked about with multiple members of this class, whether it be, somebody like Kasani Giles or CJ Lavender, where they have the ability to play nickel or play outside corner and play safety at the same time because of just the way their skill set allows. And that's something that I think certainly holds true with Rahsjon Duncan, where the way he hits like a safety, but he's got the body type to play outside corner if you really wanted him to. So you can find ways to make that work and rotate coverages and do so many different things along those lines. And it's something where I believe that he's somebody, if you miss on Devon Benjamin, he is a really, really solid option. And Washington kind of waited for a long time to offer him because it feels like they did really seem like they were in a good spot with a lot of their top targets. Obviously, the secondary class is shaped up really well with Gavin Day and Jaron Jones, the 2 4-stars leading the way. But Rahsjon Duncan is somebody who I certainly wouldn't sleep on. And as his recruiting process starts to wind down, since the majority of players want to make a decision before their senior year gets underway, I think that he's somebody where if Devon Benjamin does end up going elsewhere, I think Washington is going to move very, very quickly to try to pick up a commit from Rahsjon Duncan. And he's somebody who, over the course of his senior season, he's rated very, very similarly to Derek Johnson II, obviously the Washington legacy who committed to Oklahoma. And if he overtakes him moving forward and just, again, through the course of his senior season, as we get closer to signing day in December, I think this could end up working out very, very well for Taylor Mays, John Richardson, and this entire Washington coaching staff. And enough about recruiting. It's a lot of fun, but I want to get to some of the big-time fireworks. right after a message from our friends over at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Are you tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deals? Game Time's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you, which is a phenomenal deal. I personally love to use it when I go to baseball games. I used it when the Red Sox were in town playing the Mariners a few weeks ago. It's a phenomenal deal. One of my favorite things to do. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So when I talk about guys that are going to bring the fireworks this season, I want to talk about some players that are going to make a big impact in terms of explosive plays. And as a lot of you everydayers out there know, I like to challenge myself a little bit, and I like to get away from the traditional answers where Demond Williams, we know he's going to make some big time plays this year. Denzel Boston, Jonah Coleman, preseason All-American kind of guys. Like I wanted to get away from that and find some players that I think not necessarily might be flying under the radar, but are guys that are going to impact this offense in a major way. And the first guy that I believe is going to do that in a truly unique fashion is Adam Mohammad. This is the kind of guy where sitting behind Jonah Coleman, I think as you look around the Big Ten, you look around at a lot of these national media sites, you're not going to see a lot of mention of Adam Mohammad as a true sophomore who got 40 carries and was pretty efficient with his touches last year, but just wasn't, obviously making waves, if you will, behind somebody who was an all Big Ten selection, rushed for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns for the first time in his career in Jonah Coleman. But you look at what his skill set is and what he brings to the table. Adam Mohammad is the perfect Big Ten back, and he just has to be patient and wait 2 years really to show what he can do in a leading role. And I've been on a lot of, Big Ten preview shows. Shout out to all the phenomenal podcast hosts that have had me on to just talk about Washington and everything. And a big question that I've been asked a lot of the time is, what's Jonah Coleman's role going to look like this year after getting 216 touches? And I'm of the mind that even though he is a preseason All-American and has all these big-time expectations around him, he's at his best when his role is a little bit more limited. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get, 100 less touches or anything like that, but I think after getting 216 last year, if he's in the range of somewhere between 160 and 180 by the end of the season, that's going to be where Jedd Fisch is probably happiest, because then he's a little bit fresher, a little bit less of a chance of him getting dinged up. And then on top of that, it frees up more room to just divvy things up in the backfield and vary looks and very different kinds of plays when you have Demond Williams, who's going to get his carries, Jordan Washington, who's going to get some touches out of the backfield, and of course, Adam Mohammad as well. And when I think about Adam Mohammad, I think about a player who, like I said, is a perfect Big Ten back, because at 6'2" and 219 pounds, he's got the size. He's physical enough to run downhill and run between the tackles and pick up, third and short, fourth and short on the goal line, those kinds of yards. But he's also got the wiggle and the speed to beat you around the edge, to beat you at open space, to make guys miss. And he's somebody where if we look at it at the end of the season and he's got, let's just say it's 70 touches and he's averaging somewhere around what Jonah Coleman was during his sophomore year at Arizona, where it's 5.6 yards per carry, that's not something that's going to necessarily shock me, because of the way Jedd Fisch understands how to use a committee of running backs. And like I said, vary those looks and find different ways to get all these different guys involved, depending on what kind of personnel the defense is showing you. But then on top of that, he just has the vision. He has the talent. He has the football IQ to find different ways to make sure that he can pick up yards in these tough yardage situations, because we saw that from him last year as well. And I'm just really excited to see what year two of Adam Mohammad is going to look like, because I think he's going to finish this season with the third most carries on the team. Demond Williams, when you factor in, just sacks and different things like that, will probably still finish second between rushing attempts and, again, sacks counting as rushing yards in college. I think that that's something that's going to be really interesting, because after getting 41, 42 carries, whatever it was last year, I think that number is going to jump up to 60 or 70, because he is just in line for so much more work down the line. So that's going to want to start this season And if he is really efficient with a lot of those touches, I'm not going to be super shocked because he just has the physical skill set to make it work as well. And at wide receiver, one guy who I'm really, really interested in is Omari Evans, where the Penn State transfer, he was solidly efficient over his 3 years with the Nittany Lions, but it was an offense that I don't think was really suited for his skill set, where he is a big physical guy who proved in spring practice that he can go up and make those contested catches, and he also has the speed and athleticism to win down the field if you want him to. And by no means is he going to be the leading receiver in this offense, in my opinion, where, again, you have a preseason All-American in Denzel Boston. But if Omari Evans sets, let's just say it's a career high in receiving yards at 650, 700, somewhere in that ballpark with 4, 5, 6 touchdowns, and he rips off a couple of 40 or 50 yarders, I'm not going to be shocked because this offense sets up really, really well for him to do that. With Denzel Boston playing the X role like we saw him last year, it means that Omari Evans is more than likely, I talked about it last week, where maybe Rasheed Williams takes that spot and he moves into the slot, or vice versa. I that's the role I want to talk about right now, where if Omari Evans ends up as that Z flanker wide receiver, whatever you want to call it, he's somebody who is in line to get a lot of those downfield shot targets, because we saw, again, Rasheed Williams do it last year, and we saw Jeremiah Hunter do it last year. And I think it's something where one of the issues with Jeremiah and why he didn't live up to the expectations that were, widely regarded around him when he was coming in from Cal is a lot of just the preseason chemistry thing, where he spent a lot of time during spring and fall practice on the second team working with Demond Williams was the main goal of that. So the chemistry might not have been there with Will Rogers, and we saw it be a little bit different with Jeremiah when Demond Williams was in the game. Now, if Omari Evans is working out of that slot, which he was during spring practice when he was healthy, and we see him continue to do that during fall camp, it's something where he's got the potential to explode into some of those roles and just continue to vault forward and progress, which is, I think, one of the big reasons why he came to Washington, is because he can show off that skill set and that long speed and all those different things that he didn't really get a chance to show in that run-heavy Penn State offense. So I'm really curious to see what he's going to look like in just a role that is way more suited to what it is that he wants to do, and his really high-end skill set with athleticism and those sorts of things, and especially in a system where wide receivers coach Kevin Cummings has proven that he is a really strong developer of wide receivers. So as that just continues to progress in his 1 year with Washington, he's somebody who I'm going to be watching very, very closely. And another guy who I certainly want to talk about, I know the everydayers are enamored with him after his really strong performance in the spring game, is wide receiver Raiden Vines-Bright, where Lars and we have talked about what this wide receiver room is going to look like a lot on just throughout the offseason, because there are so many different things that could happen. You look at that slot position especially, and Kevin Green and Audric Harris are the two guys that are the favorites right now to take the majority of the reps, because they are the more experienced guys in that room, if you will, with Audric being a true sophomore and Kevin Green Jr. having to redshirt last season because of an injury. But Chris Lawson and Raiden Vines-Bright are right behind him. And the reason I want to talk about Raiden Vines-Bright is because he has all that athleticism that he showed in high school, where he was this stretch the field guy, go downfield, where he's running a 4.3 and doing all those different things that you want to see from somebody who maybe he does end up playing that Z role as well, even though he's got the size to really fit in the slot and play the Jacob Cowing role as it continues to be described in this offense. But when I watch Raiden, I just see somebody who can be that guy who leads your team in average yards per target and average yards per catch and all of those different stats because of his explosive long speed. And it's something that he did show in the spring game, where he had 8 catches for whatever it was. We all had different numbers, 143 yards or something in that department, where it's not just stretching the field. He has the ability to just take a screen pass or take a slant or some of these different short in-breaking routes and take them a long way, because he can run away from defenders, even in the middle of the field. And that's something that's really, really exciting. And it's why he was Washington's first take at wide receiver last year. It's why he was such a high priority, is because he's got all those different just playmaking skill sets that you want to see from every different spot in the formation, where you could throw him out wide and have it be the X or the Z, or if you wanted him to. But because of his size and the way he's able to shake players in tight spaces, you can throw him in the slot and find a lot of success as well. And like I said, if he ends up being the team's leader in average yards per catch at the end of the season, that's not something that would surprise me. And the more we just look at this wide receiver room, if 2 of these 5 freshmen end up burning the red shirt, that's not something that you should be shocked by. And if Raiden can stay healthy and show what he did in very limited action during the spring, I really do believe that he's going to be one of those guys, and he's going to make some big-time plays. And speaking of big-time plays, Hannes Steinbach is going to be a big-time player on the basketball court. I'm pumped up for a little bit of basketball talk. This is going to be really, really fun. I'm so high on what this season is going to look like in year 2 under Danny Sprinkle. He's done such a phenomenal job retooling this roster through the transfer portal. You've got a trio of top 100 guys coming in out of the portal in Desmond, Claude, Wesley Yates, and Omari Peterson. But the best acquisition of the offseason might have been German forward Hannes Steinbach, who's currently playing with Team Germany over at the FIBA U19 World Cup, where he's not the only person doing that from Washington, as 4-star point guard JJ Mandequit is also over there playing with Team USA. Looks like that those two squads have a really good chance of meeting up in the finals. So that would be a really, really fun matchup to watch. But I think Hannes has come out of this tournament so far, and obviously Team Germany is still in it, as the biggest winner so far. And it's not just that he's got 2 games with 19 rebounds, and in those 2 games he's got 23 and 19 points respectively. He has just shown that Danny Sprinkle and Andy Hill, who Danny gave a lot of credit to during his press conference on Monday for recruiting him and just evaluating him really, really early on in the process, have done such a good job in just their talent evaluation. And this is something that's really exciting, where another thing that he mentioned is it showed how good of a job Washington was able to do to hold off some of the big guys, whether it be, Duke, UConn, North Carolina, you name it, whoever it was, they were in on Hannes Steinbach, towards the very end of his recruitment. And Washington did a really good job. They got his signature early, and they were able to stave off, to quote Chris Peterson, all the vultures that were circling. And it's something where when we look at how he's played in this tournament, again, it's not just the base numbers. He's been the most efficient scorer in the entire tournament. And that's something that's really, really exciting when you just kind of turn your attention to the fact that he already has been playing against older, more experienced players for however long he's been in the Bundesliga, 2 years, 3 years, however long it's been. He's already gotten a whole lot of experience against high-level competition. And now he's got a chance to do that against some of the best players in the world in his age group. And again, that's why that Team USA matchup would be so much fun, with so many just high-end players that are already either playing college basketball or the top high school recruits for this upcoming season. There's a lot of promise for what he's already shown and what he's continuing to build on. And Danny talked about it the other day. One of the first things he mentioned was he's just such a good rebounder already. And the first name out of his mouth was Dennis Rodman. And he said, I don't want to compare him to Dennis Rodman, but with the way that he just understands where the ball is going every time, and it seems to find him so well, is just in that same light. And a lot of that certainly has to go to his father being a pro in the Bundesliga, and, maybe a little bit to his relationship with Dirk Nowitzki, which I personally absolutely love. He's one of my favorite players of all time. But all of those things are just so fun to see, and it's been already such a fun journey to watch, to see him rise and become arguably the best international prospect coming over and playing in college basketball this season. And he's ranked number 26, I believe it was, on ESPN's Way Too Early mock draft. And I think that's something where over the course of his first season, and honestly, it could end up being his only season with the Huskies, I'm so excited to see where his development is going to go, because you look at this roster and there's so many different ways to figure out how to use him, where he's listed at, I believe it's 6'9" right now. And Danny was very quick to emphasize that he's still growing. So it looks like he could end up playing the 4 a decent amount for this offense, or just for this team. And he might not even start when he first gets here, there are so many different ways that you can go through a starting lineup in your head right now for this basketball team and say, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Where for me right now, I think the starting 5 that is probably the most logical, just in terms of experience and what Danny Sprinkle will want ahead of his second year in the Big Ten, coming off what was a truly disastrous first season, is Omari Peterson, Wesley Yates, Desmond Claude, Jacob Ignacevic, and Frank Kepnang. And then, of course, it still leaves you with a really solid rotation coming off the bench with JJ Mandequit, with Zoom Diallo off the bench as well. And then Hannes, of course, with Lathan Somerville, Matty Traore, and all of these other guys, Bryson Tucker being another one who this coaching staff is very, very high on. The players are as well, after getting a chance to talk to some of them earlier in the week. That this is a really solid, really deep roster. And Hannes might be the guy that just, I don't want to say he ties it all together. I think he really could be the player that takes them over the top, where you've got a trio of players that can shoot 40% from beyond three-point range in Ognacevic, Peterson, and Yates. They all proved that they can do that last season. Danny Sprinkle said that Peterson is a perfect end-of-clock guy, which is something that this team really didn't have last season and really struggled in those tight games and those possessions where you just kind of need somebody to chuck up a crazy three from time to time, and every once in a while it goes in, where there was just not that player on this roster. And Sprinkle certainly seems to believe that Omari Peterson can be that guy. But all of that is great, but you need depth, especially in the front court. That was one of the biggest weaknesses that we saw from this team last season, where Frank Kepnon goes down, and it sounds like he's fully healthy coming into the spring. Danny Sprinkle said this is the first time in the 4 years now that he's been at Washington that he hasn't had any setbacks or isn't recovering from any surgeries coming into spring camp and going through spring workouts and everything like that, which is really, really good to see. And then if you have a guy like Hannes coming off the bench behind him, of course, there's the strong possibility that he overtakes Ognacevic or he overtakes Frank and just takes one of those spots in the starting lineup. But just being able to have that depth and that kind of talent coming off the bench at any point in the season. Well, again, if Frank Kepnon is coming off the bench, you're more than happy with that because you can limit his minutes a little bit, keep him healthy, and also have one of the best rim protectors in the nation just coming off the bench and giving you 18, 20 minutes a night. That's a really, really solid group up front. And that's without mentioning Christian Nitu, who's Washington's third player that's playing overseas right now, playing in the FIBA U20 Classic, I believe it is, or one of those tournaments, playing for Team Romania. So you've got such a big, long team. And that's something that Danny alluded to as well, where you just kind of look at it and you can see a roster where there are three bigs on the floor with it, Nitu or Hannes Steinbach, maybe even playing the three, and a Madi Traore and a Lathan Somerville out there. However you want to formulate it, there are so many different ways that you can make that work. And again, this is why adding a guy like Hannes Steinbach is such a perfect addition to bring this group together and take them over the top. Because one of the things that he showed in one of Germany's last outings is he's not just a guy who's going to take the ball in the post and go to work. It's he can run the floor and he can take the ball coast to coast, where he showed that with a nice little spin move and a soft touch on the finish. There are so many different things that he can do to help elevate this offense and play fast, because that's the biggest thing that Danny Sprinkle said he was upset with last season, where, there were so many different issues that you could point to as, oh, this is why they struggled. That's why they struggled. One of the biggest things that he pointed out and was very quick to was, he said, I hate the way we played last season. We had to play so slow, but it was the way that we could make it work and limit possessions with the roster that we had in place. And from the very brief portion of practice the media was allowed to watch, we did see a big uptick in how fast they were trying to get the ball up the floor and just some of the different things that they were trying to install, that this is going to be a much, much faster team. And when you go back to his time at Utah State, to his time at Montana State, I think that's something that shows really well. And again, this is why Hannes Steinbach is such an important addition to this group, because he allows you to continue to play that way. And having someone who is just that effective on the boards when you want to take so many more threes is just going to be really, really effective. Where in his last 19 rebound outing, which is just crazy to say, 8 of them came on the offensive glass. So he's somebody who can find a way to make an impact at both ends of the floor, where I know he's averaging, I believe it was over a steal and a block a game in the Bundesliga playoffs as well, where he averaged double-double through 10 games. I'm just so excited to see what he's going to bring to this roster, because there are so many different pieces that Danny Sprinkle has brought in. And he's done a really good job of starting to get these guys to mesh. And there's so many different skill sets on this roster that's why I said when you look at the starting lineup, you could do that with the bench 5 as well, because you can run a 9, 10, 11 man rotation with how much talent you have on this team. And that's something that's really intriguing, where, I didn't even mention the name Cortland Muldrew, who's somebody who Zoom Diallo was pumping up right before he started talking with us on Monday for his interview, which you can go check out on the Locked On Huskies YouTube channel, by the way. There's just so much talent on this team that whatever rotation you decide is the best one, it would probably make sense. And having that high-end talent is so important. And as Washington tries to regain the momentum that we saw from the Isaiah Thomas years, from the Brandon Roy years, this is the perfect roster that Danny Sprinkle has put in place to find a way to make it work. And as it continues to grow, I think that this is going to be a really, really fun basketball season with so much potential. If this team ends up in the top 15, top 20 at any point this season, I don't think that that would be a shock. And with all these just raised expectations, this team needs to make it to the NCAA tournament, because having a guy like Hannes Steinbach on your roster is great, but with everybody else around him, this team has really, really special potential. And we're going to be covering all of that and so much more right here on Locked On Huskies. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. And just a reminder, we've got so much more fun content that we're dropping throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you don't miss when we post a new video. And if you got any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.